Most people wake up and step straight into chaos. The alarm rings, the phone lights up, and before even taking a breath, the mind is already racing with worries, emails, and unfinished tasks. But imagine if instead of letting the day control you, you spoke just a few simple lines that gave you strength, clarity, and calm. The ancient Stoics believed that a handful of words spoken at dawn could set the course of an entire life. 5 short lines, no more, yet enough to shield your mind from anger, fear, and distraction. Wouldn't you want to know what they are? The first line to speak each morning is, "Today I will meet people who are impatient, selfish, and ungrateful." These are not words of despair, but of preparation. Marcus Aurelius began his meditations with this very reminder. He knew that the world is full of people acting out of ignorance, fear, or desire. By expecting it in advance, he was never surprised, never caught off guard, and never betrayed by false hopes that everyone would behave perfectly. Think about how often frustration begins with surprise. You expect kindness but find rudeness. You expect fairness but meet deception. The shock of it is what fuels anger. But when you begin the day already knowing that these challenges will appear, you rob them of their sting. A rude word is no longer an insult, just something you already foresaw. A selfish action is not an outrage, but part of the landscape you were prepared to walk through. This line trains the mind in resilience. It does not mean you must accept cruelty or give up on others, but it reminds you that other people's flaws are not in your control. What is in your control is your response. If you start your morning with this thought, you meet the world with armor already on. The insults, the impatience, the unkindness, they may still come, but they will find you steady, ready, and unshaken. The second line to speak each morning is, "I control my mind, not the world around me." This is the heart of Stoic practice. So much suffering comes from trying to bend the world to our will, wanting people to change, demanding events to go our way, wishing fate would align with our desires. But the Stoics remind us that the world is not ours to command. Storms will come, fortunes will change, people will disappoint. To fight against this is to fight against reality itself. What you do command is your own mind, your thoughts, your judgments, your choices. These belong to you alone. Epictetus, once a slave, discovered freedom not in escaping chains, but in refusing to let them define his spirit. Even in bondage, he said, "You may chain my leg, but not my will." That is the power you have every single morning. When you repeat this line, you realign yourself with what is truly within your grasp. If someone insults you, you cannot stop their words, but you can control whether you let those words wound you. If fate takes away your wealth, you cannot control the loss, but you can control whether you fall into despair or adapt with strength. This line is a compass, pointing always inward. It shifts your energy away from the impossible task of controlling others and toward the possible, noble task of mastering yourself. Each morning you speak it, you reclaim your power where it truly lies, within. The third line to speak each morning is, "This day is a gift. It may be my last." These words are not meant to darken the spirit, but to awaken it. The Stoics often reminded themselves of death, not to fall into gloom, but to sharpen their sense of living. Seneca wrote that we are always dying a little, each day slipping from our grasp. Yet most people live as if time were endless, wasting hours in distraction, anger, or trivial pursuits. When you say this line, you remind yourself that the day is precious. You do not own tomorrow. You are not promised another sunrise. And because of this, today has immense weight. Think about how differently you act when you know time is short. Arguments shrink in importance, kindness rises in value, and gratitude takes the place of complaint. This line does not tell you to rush or to panic. It tells you to live deliberately. If today were your final chance to speak with someone you love, how would you speak? If today were your last opportunity to act with virtue, what would you choose? The truth is, you cannot control how many days you are given, but you can control the spirit you bring to each one. When you begin your morning with this reminder, life no longer feels ordinary. It feels fragile, rare, and worthy of your best effort. The fourth line to speak each morning is, "What happens is not always good, but I can make good from it." This is the Stoic art of turning obstacles into opportunities. Marcus Aurelius wrote that, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." He was not suggesting that life will always hand us favorable events, but that the mind has the power to transform misfortune into fuel. When you speak this line, you are declaring that you will not be broken by what comes. You may face rejection, loss, or hardship, but you refuse to see these as final defeats. Instead, you see them as material, raw clay for building strength, patience, and resilience. Imagine fire consuming anything placed into it. Whether wood, straw, or oil, it transforms it into fuel for its flame. In the same way, you can take every difficulty and burn it into wisdom. This does not mean pretending that pain is pleasant or that suffering is desirable. It means refusing to waste suffering. If grief must come, let it teach you compassion. If failure arrives, let it sharpen your humility. If injustice crosses your path, let it deepen your commitment to justice. This line reminds you that no day is wasted, even when it brings trials. For every circumstance carries within it the chance to grow stronger in character. By repeating this each morning, you set yourself on guard not against life's troubles, but against the temptation to see them as meaningless. Nothing is meaningless when you decide to make good from it. The fifth line to speak each morning is, "I need little, and I already have enough." This is the heart of Stoic contentment. Epictetus often reminded his students that wealth is not found in gathering more, but in needing less. The world tells you to chase what is beyond your reach. More possessions, more recognition, more comfort. But the Stoics knew that this endless chase leaves the mind restless and enslaved. When you speak this line, you strip away the illusion that happiness lies in what you do not yet have. You remind yourself that you woke up with breath in your lungs, a mind capable of reason, and the chance to act with virtue. What more is truly required? Of course, there are things you may wish for, better health, security, or success, but by anchoring yourself in sufficiency, you step off the wheel of endless wanting. Think of a man who drinks from a clear spring. He does not complain that the water is not poured into a golden cup. He simply drinks and is refreshed. In the same way, when you see the food before you, the roof above you, and the people beside you, you realize abundance is already present. This line is not about denying ambition or rejecting improvement. It is about protecting your peace from the poison of constant desire. Each morning when you say these words, you remind yourself, enough has already been given. Everything beyond this is extra, and I can be at peace without it. These 5 lines are not just words to recite, they are disciplines to practice. The real challenge is not in saying them when the sun is rising, but in carrying them when the day begins to test you. It is easy to whisper, "I control only my mind," while the house is quiet, but much harder when someone insults you or when plans fall apart. It is simple to say, "I will meet difficult people," until you are standing face to face with one who mocks, lies, or betrays. The Stoics never promised ease. They promised strength built through trial. Just as a wrestler cannot grow strong without resistance, The mind cannot become firm without obstacles. When Marcus Aurelius reminded himself each morning that he would meet the ungrateful and the arrogant, he did so to keep from being surprised. The problem we face is that we forget our morning wisdom when the test arrives. We fall into anger, impatience, or despair, and by nightfall we wonder why the lines did not work. But the truth is, the lines only work if they are lived. They are not charms to protect you from suffering, but instructions for how to respond when suffering comes. The challenge is to move from repetition to embodiment, from mere speech to action. This is the hard path, but it is also the only one that leads to freedom. The words you spoke at dawn must become the lens through which you meet the day, again and again, until they are no longer just lines, but the very way you live. To live these lines, you must first slow down enough to notice your own mind. Most of the time, people drift through the day without awareness, reacting out of habit. They are pushed by anger, pulled by desire, or drowned by worry. Stoicism teaches you to pause, to step back, and to see your thoughts as they rise. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. If you allow fear and resentment to stain your mind, you will live in their shade. But if you catch them early, you can choose a different color. One way to develop this habit is to carry the lines with you, not only in memory, but in writing. Write them on paper, place them on your desk, keep them where your eyes will fall throughout the day. When you feel yourself rushing or snapping, stop and recall. I control only my mind. This simple pause breaks the chain of reaction and opens the door to reason. Think of it like steering a ship. If you wait until the storm is raging before you grab the rudder, it may be too late. But if you are watchful, adjusting early and often, you stay on course. Stoicism is the practice of steering early. It is not perfection, but progress. Choosing moment by moment to remember what you declared at dawn. The more you practice, the more natural it becomes, until one day the lines are not reminders, but instincts. Then you will see that the morning words are shaping your very nature, turning discipline into character. Every practice meets resistance, and with these morning lines, the resistance often comes from within. You may begin the day strong, but by noon your patience is thin, and by evening you feel you have failed. The challenge is not only in the world outside, but in the discouragement that rises inside when you fall short. The Stoics would remind us, failing once does not erase the effort. To stumble is part of training. What matters is to return again and again to the discipline you have chosen. Epictetus compared life to a wrestling match. You will not remain unthrown, you will be knocked down many times. But the true test is whether you rise and enter the fight once more. The same is true of the mind. You may forget to control your response or lose your calm in front of others, but the next moment always offers another chance to practice. Each failure, when met with honesty, is itself an instructor. The world will also test your resolve. Circumstances may come that feel larger than your morning words, a sudden loss, a betrayal, a weight of uncertainty. In those moments, it is tempting to abandon the lines as childish or powerless. Yet it is precisely then that they matter most. To whisper, "I can endure in the dark hours," is not weakness, it is courage. To admit, "I will meet difficult people" in the midst of conflict is not defeat, it is wisdom. The resistance you feel is proof that the practice is working, pressing against your weaker self and calling forth the stronger one. One of the deepest benefits of repeating Stoic lines each morning is that they reshape how you see the day before it even begins. Most people wake up and immediately allow the world to tell them what matters. Messages, worries, schedules, demands. Their mind is already being pulled in a dozen directions before their feet touch the ground. But when you start with deliberate words, you anchor yourself before the storm arrives. You decide the tone of the day instead of letting the day decide it for you. This is what the Stoics meant when they spoke of living in agreement with nature, not the trees and rivers alone, but your own nature as a rational being. You have the ability to step back, to choose, to say, "This is what I will hold on to today." It is a quiet act of rebellion against the chaos of the world, and it builds something greater than mood. It builds character. Consider how a soldier trains before battle, not during it. He sharpens his sword, strengthens his body, prepares his mind. In the same way, these morning lines are your training. They remind you of your place, your limits, and your power. Over time, they change you. What once felt like a discipline becomes a way of being. You begin to meet anger with calm, setbacks with patience, and temptation with restraint. The words are no longer something you say, they become who you are, and in that transformation lies the quiet strength of Stoicism, the power to face each day with a mind that is your own. Repetition might seem boring, but it is the root of mastery. Think of how a musician plays the same scales for years, or how an athlete practices the same movements until they are second nature. The Stoics treated wisdom in the same way. By repeating guiding lines every morning, you are not just speaking words, you are carving grooves in your mind. With each repetition, those grooves grow deeper and your thoughts flow into them more naturally. Epictetus often reminded his students that philosophy is not about reading or talking, but about living. You can read a line once and admire it, but it will vanish like smoke unless you return to it again and again. Morning repetition is how you make wisdom stick. At first, you may need to force the words like lifting a heavy weight. But with time, they become lighter, and eventually they lift you. The power of repetition is not that it makes you perfect, but that it makes you ready. When someone insults you, you don't have to search for patience. You've been practicing it each dawn. When fear strikes, you don't scramble for courage. You've repeated to yourself that death and pain are not the worst evils. This is why the Stoics trained like soldiers, like athletes of the mind. They knew that life's tests come without warning, and the only way to be ready is to practice daily. Repetition arms you quietly until the day comes when you find yourself calm in the face of what once shook you. And then you realize the practice has become strength. The real test of these morning lines is not how well you can recite them, but how well you can live them. Words are easy to speak. Actions reveal their truth. You can say, "I will meet whatever comes with courage." But the measure is in how you respond when your plans collapse or when someone treats you unfairly. This is where the discipline of morning practice shows its value. It prepares you for the weight of the day, but only if you carry those words beyond the quiet of dawn. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself often that philosophy was not for display. He did not write his meditations to impress others. He wrote them as instructions to himself, reminders to live with virtue in the middle of Rome's chaos. He was emperor with immense power, but he still needed to remind himself daily to be just, patient, and calm. If he required such discipline, how much more do we? Living these lines means holding them in your mind when you are tested. When anger rises, ask yourself, does this match the calm I promised myself this morning? When fear grips you, ask, am I living the courage I repeated at dawn? When distractions pull you, remember, life is short and today is not to be wasted. This constant checking is not harsh judgment but honest alignment. It is how philosophy moves from the page to your pulse, from morning ritual to living truth. Only then do the lines you speak in the stillness of dawn become the guideposts of a well-lived day. There will be mornings when you don't want to speak the lines. Maybe you're tired, frustrated, or weighed down by things you cannot control. This is exactly when the practice matters most. The Stoics taught that discipline is not about ease, but about necessity. You don't strengthen a muscle by lifting nothing. You strengthen it by lifting when it feels heavy. In the same way, your mind grows stronger when you repeat these words even when you least feel like it. Think of Epictetus, born into slavery, enduring hardships most of us cannot imagine. He had no comfort, no control over where he lived, and yet he trained his mind to be free by holding fast to guiding principles. His power came from remembering each day that while others could harm his body, no one could touch his reason. That is the spirit behind this morning ritual. It is not about perfection, but persistence. On difficult mornings, the lines act like a compass. They don't erase your struggles, but they point you back towards steadiness. Courage, calm, patience, gratitude, focus. These are not fleeting emotions, but choices. And every time you choose them, especially when life resists, you carve deeper grooves in your character. You begin to live in alignment with the person you wish to be. So don't see resistance as failure. See it as the proving ground. Each repetition under pressure strengthens the mind, just as each repetition in the gym strengthens the body. The days you want to skip the practice are the days you need it most. By the time you've spoken all 5 lines, something subtle but powerful happens. You've reminded yourself of your own agency. You've placed your mind in the driver's seat instead of letting the day sweep you away. That shift, though invisible, changes how you meet every challenge. Think about it. Most people stumble into the day without intention. They react to whatever appears, like leaves carried by the wind. But when you start with clear principles, you're not a leaf, you're the tree. The winds can blow, storms can rage, but your roots are set deep. This is what the Stoics meant by living in agreement with nature, not floating aimlessly, but standing firm, guided by reason. The beauty of this practice is its simplicity. It takes less than a minute, but its influence lingers for hours. A harsh word from someone no longer unsettles you so easily. An unexpected obstacle becomes a chance to practice patience. Even moments of joy are savored more fully because your mind is already awake and present. And over time, these small beginnings add up. One calm morning becomes a week of steady mornings. A week becomes months. And soon you've built a foundation that few things can shake. The Stoics were not superhuman. They were ordinary people who repeated small disciplines until those disciplines shaped their character. You can do the same. So when you speak those 5 lines tomorrow morning, remember, you are training for the long game. You are practicing the art of mastery over yourself, and that is the greatest power a human being can ever hold. When you reflect on these 5 lines, you may notice how they connect like links in a chain. Each one reinforces the others, forming a complete shield for the mind. Gratitude sets your foundation. Acceptance keeps you calm in the face of what you can't control. Responsibility directs your energy toward what you can influence. Control over your desires and fears prevents you from being enslaved by them. And finally, service gives your life meaning beyond yourself. Together, they are not just words, they are a way of living. This is why the Stoics repeated such phrases daily. They understood the mind forgets quickly, that life's noise can drown out wisdom if you don't keep it close. They believed that truth must be lived, not merely known. And living it starts with reminding yourself every morning. Think of it like sharpening a blade. Even the sharpest sword grows dull if neglected. Your mind is the same. By repeating these lines, you keep it sharp and ready for whatever the day throws at you. Without them, the edge weakens and the world cuts deeper than it should. This practice is simple, but it's not easy. It requires showing up every day, even when you don't feel like it. Some mornings you'll say the words and not feel any different. But don't let that fool you. Seeds planted today may not sprout tomorrow, but give them time and they will grow into unshakable strength. The Stoics weren't chasing perfection, they were practicing resilience. And so can you. With 5 lines spoken at dawn, you begin the day not as a victim of chance, but as a master of your own mind. If this gave you something to think about, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss the next video.